Sorry. Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Tim's Time. You caught me napping. Sorry about that. It's I lost an hour's sleep this weekend and yesterday, and goodness gracious, I love daylight savings time and the sun going down later. But boy, I missed that hour of sleep. You would think that I would know after this point in my life to go to bed an hour earlier, but I never do. I always just stay up and deprive myself of sleep, and boom, we're heading into spring and heading toward Easter on most cases. Probably the same is true of you. In fact, the same is true of most Americans when they're polled about it. Most do not go to bed and take into account losing the hour of sleep. All right, what does that have to do with Tim's Time? Just this. When I think of losing that hour of sleep and I faint on the wall or whatever, like I'm exhausted, for some reason, my particular brain is wired. I always go to the disciples and that story in Gethsemane where Jesus leaves them and says, I'm going to go a little further and I'm going to pray, and I want you guys to stay here, stay awake and pray. And you know it. 3 times he comes back, and 3 times they've fallen asleep. And before you know it, he says, uh-oh, time has come. Son of Man is being delivered into the hands of the chief priests and the scribes and the soldiers, and you should have kept awake, basically, is the image of it. I remember hearing a message. I'm fairly certain it was at an evangelism conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, years and years ago when I was at seminary. And I heard a message on the disciples falling asleep. I'm fairly certain it was an evangelist by the name of Bailey Smith, but I'm not 100% certain of that. I just remember him challenging us to be diligent and disciplined and intentional, and likening that to the disciples staying awake inspired me to do my own Bible study, and I came up with about 3 or 4 reasons, 2 of them are kind of kin, that the disciples didn't do so well in that area. And I found that through the years, those reasons still impact me and affect me as to why I have difficulty living a life of vision, purpose, contentment, intentionality, depending, it doesn't matter, whatever word you want to use. Here's the godly life, and here are the things that stop me. Another phrase I've heard through the years is life gets in the way. And in these 4 areas, life kind of gets in the way. So that's what I'm going to share with you over the next few weeks as we head toward Easter. We're going to talk about why they had difficulty. And so the first one I've already alluded to, and I'll just touch on it this morning, and then we'll pick up next week. And that is, they were tired. They fell asleep because they were tired. They were physically tired. The Gospels tell us on several occasions, Mark says it best in his account of the feeding of the 5,000. There were so many people coming and going that they didn't even have time to rest. They didn't even have time to eat. It was just ministry. And we lose sight of this sometimes in our reading of the Scripture, just how jam-packed it was. Jesus' ministry only lasted for 3 years, and yet he touched so many different people, and he was in constant demand. Now, he had these occasions, and he had this habit of trying to thin out the crowd, because he would really challenge them, and it would say, from that time on, many would turn their back. But they still had a large multitude of followers, and they were some kind of physically tired. Not only that, I suspect they were emotionally tired, because on the night that Jesus went to Gethsemane, beforehand, remember, he's in the upper room. Remember those words? Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, in my Father's house. Jesus begins telling them that he's going to leave them, which leads to a little bit of loss and grief. He also says, you're all going to scatter and deny me. To which Peter responds and says, I'll die with you. Oh no, Peter, you know what you're going to do. And Peter does it. So this is like some emotional fatiguing week. Earlier in the week, before they ever get to Gethsemane, Jesus has ridden into Jerusalem on a donkey, and everybody's praising him. Then he overturns the temple, and people are calling for his head. I mean, it's just an emotionally exhausting week. And now Jesus sits them in the quiet evening in Gethsemane and says, pray for an hour. I haven't gone through any of that. And I still, after all these years, have difficulty fully concentrating in my prayer for an entire hour. Charles Stanley once said, pity the person who hasn't fallen asleep in his or her prayer. That's the sweetest sleep in the world. And he's right. They fell asleep. And so, what's the application and implication for you this week? 1, if you're going to live intentionally and you're going to be disciplined in seeking the Lord, then you got to treat that as important, if not more important, than your job. Which means you got to be physically and emotionally rested and prepared to do it. And that takes intentionality. In fact, that takes setting the alarm earlier and going to bed at the normal time so that you get the right amount of sleep, so that when you show up in church like our folks did yesterday, they are wide awake, sitting on go, ready to worship the Lord, rather than like maybe some folks who are sitting in church trying to stay awake because they have lost sleep. So, have a great week. Seek the Lord, pray, and stay awake.